Good evening, welcome to World Talks here on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Kate. The summer months might be a time of rest and lowered vigilance for some, but for others it's a time for creative digital vandalism. At first glance, it looks like a childish prank. Offensive names appearing on Google Maps next to famous Warsaw landmarks and respected state institutions. But upon closer analysis, we're looking at significant cybersecurity breaches. To tell us more about what happened, let's bring in Igor Protasowicki, cybersecurity expert at Vistula University. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us. So,
it's my pleasure, as usual.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us. So, let's tell our viewers about what happened. But before we bring in some images of these Google Map renamings, let's get your idea and your analysis on what happened. Was this just online vandalism, or are we looking at something more serious, some real security breaches?
In terms of cybersecurity, things that might look like simple prank, as the outcome might be a part of some larger plan. So it's too soon to say something that could be bonding.
Well, let's take a look at perhaps some images to give our viewers a better idea of actually what happened. We have some interesting renaming visuals here. We have something like Palace on Epstein Island. And we also have something that has been renamed to Hooligans Palace. So we're looking at some very respected Warsaw landmarks, some institutions that have been here for the longest of times here in Warsaw, places that have been that are visited by tourists. And in other words, we're looking at something that is not just a prank, but something that is much more serious. Does it suggest perhaps that public knowledge is now something that can be editable, something that is vulnerable, that can be changed with an algorithm? Can you tell us a little bit more about that from a technical point of view?
We have two quite important factors in that event. First one is vast majority of landmarks that names has been changed is connected to Polish politics and quite important places from state's perspective. And another thing is those changes are directed towards only one side of our politics. On the other hand, we are talking about media that is easy to be edited by users. That's very close to be social media, basically, if we're talking about the editability of the contents that you can find on Google Maps, because Google Maps itself, it's not only meant to be operated by users by leaving comments on specific landmarks, but the landmarks themselves might be edited by anyone who has a Google account and is able to use this application. It's one of the basically features of the application. It's very easy to use, and on the other hand, only thing required to such changes to be approved on the map and to be visible by everyone is approval by other users. So it can be organized action. It basically must be organized action to approve such changes. It must be conducted by few people working in cooperation, where one person changes the name, a few other persons are approving the name to appear on the Google map. And that indicates the other thing. It was not a simple prank. It was prepared before.
Do you think that this is something that we should be taking very seriously at this stage, or do you think that this is a one-off?
It depends how we look at it, because on one hand, it might be, as we said before, it might be just a prank. But on the other hand, we have to remember what happens in the background. Right now, Poland is involved in military action that takes place behind our eastern border, and we are part of hybrid war, basically only because of that involvement. So we have to think whether every single event like that is not actually a foreign threat, or maybe was not taken by foreign organizations, whether it's just internal prank by some youngsters. If not...
Go ahead.
If not, we have to take every single event like this very seriously, because right now a vast majority of our society is using online maps for navigation on a daily basis. We're using those maps for navigation in official business. So if we take under consideration that changes like this can be widespread, that those changes can take routes as well, what we end up with is just a matter of imagination.
Absolutely. I wanted to ask, do you think that Google Maps should be treated as public infrastructure, or even though it's publicly owned?
Well,
privately owned, rather. Sorry,
privately owned. It's privately owned, so it's... the fact that the vast majority of public is using it, it doesn't make it the public asset. We might have certain expectations on Google to provide those services within the specific quality. This quality might be imposed by law, but I'm not sure whether creating a special dedicated law on that matter would not limit the ability to expand and evolve specific tools, rather than to lock it in the place where it's impossible to evolve it furthermore. But on the other hand, even right now, within the European Union, the vendor of social media, vendor of information, is responsible for proper verification of this information. And that event actually proved that not only on this typical social media where we share private information about ourselves, like pictures and statuses, but maps as well should be taken under consideration within those regulations.
But this situation, I suppose, many of us makes us think of the Wikipedia edit wars, where the fight is not necessarily over the service, but over what I suppose becomes the truth in inverted commas. Obviously, that is something that can be discussed for hours. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, we are feeding ourselves with information. Every single vendor of information basically strongly depends on whatever resources we can deliver. We as the scientists, we as the societies, we depend on LLMs, like artificial intelligence is being widely asked basically about everything. And we already know that it's quite simple thing to teach LLM to spread wrong information, fake information, or even potentially harmful information. And that case with changing names on Google Maps harms not only us as a society, but it might be harmful in the future, depending on how criminals might use it in the future.
This is definitely a story that will attract a lot of attention now. Everybody's going to be checking out Google Maps. Igor Protasowicki, cybersecurity expert at Vistula University. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
My pleasure.
And that's a wrap for World Talks. Thank you so much for joining us, and stay tuned for much more throughout the evening. Goodbye.